I'm going to share my production techniques. The techniques I share with you guys, whether it's After Effects or Final Cut or Photoshop or Illustrator, these are my techniques based on 24 years of doing this, guys. These are techniques you're not going to find elsewhere. There's a lot of trainers out there, but they're kind of going from the textbook. They're not training from experience. My techniques are designed to make you better than the next person. My students who take my classes in New York City thrive because they're better prepared, because they think how the software thinks. That's my whole battle cry. That's why my solutions are totally different than anybody else. So let's get started. The subject for today is I'm going to show you how to create a starter page and use that starter page, not a template page. Use a starter page in Dreamweaver to use in my Adobe Edge for text effects, because Adobe Edge is great for working with type, but Adobe Edge is not too great creating type from scratch because it's too cumbersome. So here's what we're going to do to get started. I'm just going to make a new file in Dreamweaver file, new, Command N. Now the starter pages are these pages right here. Okay, we're going to create our own custom starter page. We're going to start out by creating a brand new page from scratch. So first thing we're going to do is save this, of course. Save this. Let's call this Edge Start Page. Okay, and let's put up here, think Adobe Edge. If you're creating an HTML page, always get in the habit of titling this. I see a lot of instructors on YouTube that show these techniques, but they forget to title the page. If you do a Google search, there's 63 million people who have not titled their page. That's just a bad idea. Okay, so let's get started here. First thing we need to do is, now this is not a typical web setup. This is a web setup, HTML setup specifically for Edge. I'm going to set up this Dreamweaver page to basically give myself more flexibility with working with type in my Edge document. So I'm going to basically make a body tag rule, select the tag, make a rule. We want our body tag by default to be 60 pixels high, and we're going to pick the font of Tacoma. So by default, that's going to be my body tag text. Okay, make a change, save a change. Good habit to get into. Okay, so here's my objective. I want to have individual letters dance across the page. Again, to do this from scratch inside of Edge is very cumbersome. Yes, it does have a typing tool, but it's not as easy as doing it in Dreamweaver or an HTML page first. Apply CSS. It's much simpler to do this. Now, this technique, every technique I share with my students has a reason behind it. There's a method to my madness. So we're going to basically type in at the space bar, type space, type space. Each letter is going to be separated by a space. I'm going to type in T space A space ED. Who said spelling counted? Okay, now why did I do it this way? Because if you look at your code for a second, I just want to share this technique with you. This is everything in here is separated by a space. So therefore I can tag it differently. The objective here is I want to talk to it differently inside of Adobe Edge. That means it needs to be tagged differently. So we're going to tag it. Now the reason I'm doing it this way, yes, we can make each one a separate div tag, but that's a lot of hoop jumps. Here's a simple solution. Double click Command B, tags it as bold. B for bold, or the strong tag. Strong tag's down here. Control B, Windows, Command B, Macintosh. Double click Command B, double click B, double click Command B, double click Command B, double click Command B, double click Command B, Control B, Windows, etc. Double click Command B, double click Command B, double click Command B, double click Command B. Now, why did I do that? Because now each letter has been tagged with a strong tag. Therefore, I can talk to it through CSS. I can talk to it separately inside my Adobe Edge workspace. So next step is to take the contents here and put it inside of a wrapper tag, div tag. That's going to be the viewable area of my stage. That's going to be my surrounding wrapper. So we're going to go up to the Layout tab and basically wrap this content with a tag called wrapper. Okay, so I'm going to create a rule for wrapper. So wrapper, select the tag, make a rule. Select the tag, make a rule. So wrapper is going to be, let's make this 450 by 450. We want to drop this down from the top, 18 pixels. We want to put this in the center to the left, center to the right, automatically. Okay, now what I want to have happen here is I want the text, actually let's make this 600 by 400, and background color is going to be, we're going to pick this color right here. I like this little blue color a lot right there, and the type is going to be white. Okay, make a change, save a change. Now, how you want the letters to be are totally up to you. If this is too big or too small, remember we did this in the body tag, so we can double click the body tag and I can make this smaller. So let's make this 40 pixels high. Okay, make a change, save a change. Now, if you want your wrapper to have padding, of course, you would double click the wrapper, go to the box section, and give this a padding of, say, 20 pixels. Okay, now here's the slick trick here. Okay, these have been tagged with strong tags, but it has to be set up as a block in order to work properly inside of Adobe Edge. So we're going to basically set a rule for the strong tag. Strong tag, select the tag, make a rule. Select the tag, make a rule. Okay, so we're going to select the tag, make a rule for strong. Strong is going to be set to block. So display as a block of type, similar to a div tag. Now, why didn't I just do a div tag? Because div tag, I gotta basically put the code in there, Command T, type in div. The bold tag, I get this Command B, Control B, Control B. It's all about shortcuts. The simplest, easy way to do something. Now, if I hit the apply option, the text is lining straight up and down. I don't want the text to be straight up and down. I want the strong tag based on these choices to float to the left. So if it floats to the left, the content goes to the right. So there's my start. That's how I start this page out. So basically, I'm going to use this as a starter page for my Adobe Edge software. So anytime I want to make text with separate letters, I can use as a starter page. So here's how you save the starter page. Do not confuse the starter page with the template page. The starter pages are the pages that you find here. We're going to create our own custom starter page next. Okay, so again, I just want to repeat, I'm going to create a starter page. The starter page is similar to these pages that you find in your Adobe document and create a new file. Now, if you feel more comfortable having nothing on your page, well, you want some kind of starting position. So I'm just going to save this with my generic text on the page. Okay, now another technique when working with text, see, sometimes if you wanted to modify or add to this text, sometimes the CSS gets in the way. So it's a good habit to come up here and turn your CSS off. This way you have pure text editor make changes to. If this is not on your Dreamweaver, then you need to go to View, Toolbars, and turn Style Rendering on. It's not on by default. This is a good production technique because this helps you to basically change your CSS without getting CSS in the way. So I can turn my CSS on, turn my CSS off. Okay, so how do we create the starter page that I keep talking about? The suspense is just killing me. So I set up already on my desktop here. I set up, because I'm that kind of guy, I already set up a starter page div tag. I'm sorry, starter page div tag. A alias to my starter page folders. I'm going to double click this. Now to share with you, I have to be on Macintosh, but if you're on Windows, it's in the same place. Just create yourself a shortcut on your desktop to get to the starter pages. So I'm going to share with you, if you hold down the Command key on Macintosh, the starter page, I have been working in Dreamweaver CS 5.5, but this works in any version of Dreamweaver for the past 6 or 7 years. So Adobe folder, inside the Adobe folder is the configure folder. Inside that is the built-in folder. Inside that is the layout folder. So we're going to save our file inside of this folder. Therefore, it's going to make a starter page for us. Again, don't confuse that with a template page. This is really cool stuff. This is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle. So I created an alias on my desktops. Anytime I want to do this, it's going to be very simple to do. So back inside Dreamweaver. So now I'm going to save the file, then save as, navigate right to the desktop. So we're going to put a underscore here to force us to the top menu. So I'm going to double click my Dreamweaver start page and save this file inside that directory with the HTML tag. Not HTML, HTML, and I'm going to save that file. There's no links in here, so there's nothing to update, so I can say no. Okay, now how does this help me? Well, next time I want to create a new document, I can go to my start page by clicking right here. There's my start page, and I'm good to go. So this new start page is an untitled page, but it has the rules and the CSS setup for my basic page setup for my Adobe Edge project. So we're going to save this as Edge text version 1. Now here's another, oh, I didn't mean to save it inside the layouts folder. My mistake on that. I just want to save it back inside my web folder. So pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That was my mistake. Now again, the advantage of a starter page, you always have your original page to go back to. It's just a good production technique. You can have variations of starting pages. The other thing I want to do here is title my document, which is always a good idea to get into. So we'll call this Adobe Edge Test 2. Make a change, save a change. So now we're prepared to go to Adobe Edge. Okay, so now we're in Adobe Edge. So I'm going to file open file, Command O, Control O, Windows. Navigate way to where the file is kept. Now, very important step here. I opened up that file that I created inside of Dreamweaver. A good habit to get into is if you want a backup of your backup, don't work on this file. Save this file as another file. So as an example, I'm going to save this as version 1, B. This way, if I totally muck this up, I have the original to go back to. Again, production techniques are important because it's just going to save you time and money. You don't want to have to reinvent the wheel here. So I'm going to save this file. Now, when you save the file inside Adobe Edge, it saves the proprietary file plus the HTML file. Okay, now, very important step here, extremely important. I want to reposition this text so it's in the center of my page. Now, could I have done that inside the Dreamweaver CSS? Yes, I could have, but I don't assume that the text is always going to be in the center. So I'm just going to start from the top left-hand corner. But very important step, I need to turn my auto keyframe off. If you turn on, it's going to create keyframes for you. I don't want to create a bunch of keyframes at this point. Okay, so Command Z to undo that and turn this off. Now, the other thing I'm going to do, I don't want to move my wrapper tag. I just want to move my text. I'm going to lock in the top right-hand corner. I'm going to lock the wrapper tag. So now I can Command A Macintosh, Control A Windows, select all. Now, notice if I try to move this, I can't because the wrapper tag is still selected. So I'm going to hold down the Command key, Macintosh, Control key, Windows, and deselect wrapper tag. Therefore, that enables me to move my text into place. Command key minus zooms out. Command key plus zooms in. I'm going to position that roughly in the center of my page. Unfortunately, this version doesn't have alignment tools, but that's okay. We can deal with that. Make a change, save a change. Command plus zooms in, Command minus zooms out. Command plus zooms in, Command minus zooms out. Now I have the luxury of having my text in separate containers. Therefore, I can talk to it differently. Now I can affect them differently, starting from the top to the bottom. So now I'm going to turn my auto keyframe stopwatch back on. Now, if you looked in previous tutorials I've done on this same technique, I'm not going to move my playback head. I'm going to move the marker. So this is in seconds. It breaks down to milliseconds. There's 1,000 milliseconds to a second. So 7.5 seconds would be 7,500 milliseconds. So we're going to take this marker. I'm going to move this to roughly half a second. Okay, then I'm going to take my text, my T for type. Now you can select this one of two ways. You can select it inside of the project window over here, the elements window, or you can select it right on the page. Now, looks like something funky is happening here. Okay, so once again, my objective is to animate the letters separately. We can do this quite simply. Now again, if you're going to move all your text on the screen just for position, make sure your auto keyframe stopwatch is turned off. That's going to create a huge problem if it's not. So we're going to turn the auto stopwatch on. Similar to other tutorials I've done on this, we're going to move the marker to where I want the animation to stop. Now I'm not going to move the playhead. If you move the playhead, I want this T to be there when I stop. When it gets to this point right here, that's where I want the T to be. So I'm going to move the marker to that position. Then I'm going to take the T and move the T off the page by holding down the Shift key like a little bit faster. That created these keyframes. Now in addition to that, my playback head is still here in the beginning. My marker is still here. I'm going to mark to this point right there, and that's where I want to do my opacity setting. I'm going to move this down. So I'll put a keyframe right there because I want the opacity to come in at 100% before it finishes animating. Okay, so if I move my playback head here, it's going to animate down. Again, wherever the marker is, that's where it's going to put it. Now let's say as an example, let's save this, make a change, save a change. Let's say my marker was way down the road. How do I get it back to where I started? Command K moves the marker to wherever the playback head is. So if your marker is someplace down the road in your timeline, rather than scrub to get it, Command K Macintosh, Control K Windows. Also, if you have a lot of animation in here, Option plus expands the timeline, Option minus or Alt. Option on Macintosh, Alt on Windows, minus plus expands the timeline. Now, it doesn't change the timeline, just makes you see more or less of the timeline. Okay, now how do I create the rest of the animation? Very simply, if you look at my other tutorials, I select this. Now, before I do this, I'm going to come here and let's do an ease out bounce. So if I hit the space bar, it's going to bounce right into place. Now, incidentally, notice that it's happening very quick, within a quarter of a second, within a half a second. Animation, especially for letters, shouldn't take a bunch of time. So I can affect this one of two ways. I can take this and drag this back, or I can go to my properties palette up here and drag the milliseconds down. So let's make this actually 250 milliseconds, which is a quarter of a second. So it's going to take a quarter of a second for this letter to drop down. Okay, so I just want things to pop really quickly. So I'm going to select this. Make sure your playback head is at the end here. Incidentally, these guys here go to the end of the playhead and beginning of the playhead. Okay, so I'm going to select the H. Now you can do that on this stage, or I can just go right down the list here. I'm going to select the next letter and hit paste. Okay, so I copy this, make sure that that's copied, select the next letter, and paste. So I have this selected with the current easing. I copy that Command C, Macintosh, Control C, Windows. Make sure your playback head is in the next stop. I can go right down the road here. I'm going to select this layer and paste. Select the next layer, paste. Next layer, paste. Next layer, paste. Next layer, paste. Next layer, paste, etc., etc. Okay, I don't want to bore you with pasting a zillion times, so I went a little bit forward inside the movie here. So if you get the space bar, this is what we have going on here. The letters just drop from the top. Okay, space bar, the letters drop from the top. Now, what I want to have happen next, I want the letters to go off the page exactly how they came onto the page. So again, a little trick here, if I hold down the Option key, the up and down arrow key, or backslash key, it's the key 3 over from the P key. So it's P left bracket, right bracket, / key, or backslash key, whatever you, or the pipe symbol for that matter. Now, if you do that, that fits everything inside my timeline, so I can see exactly where I'm going with this. Okay, so now I'm going to Alt minus to zoom back out. I'm going to move my playback head to roughly about a half second down the road. Make sure that you have the last letter selected. The last letter is selected, so the last letter can be affected. Now keep in mind we copy the keyframes, but I don't want to just paste the keyframes. I want to paste the keyframes backwards, so it goes off the page. It goes back up, back up, back up. The shortcut for that is paste inverted, Command-Shift-V for Macintosh, Control-Shift-V for Windows. So here's a simple way to do this. I'm going to start from the bottom, Command-Shift-V. Go to the next one, Command-Shift-V. Go to the next one, Command-Shift-V, 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 Command-Shift-V. So if I play this, the letters come back on. Notice the timeline. It's going to play through the timeline. It's going to wait for a second or two. Now, if you want to basically not have it wait as long, then just put less space between your two. So I basically paste inverted, and that's how it's done. Now, from here, let's say I do want to move these letters closer together. And there's a bunch of them in here. So how can I do that? Well, I can select the letters by just dragging them from point A to point B. I'm going to hold down Option less than so I could see my entire timeline here, or at least most of my timeline. So I'm going to drag through from point A all the way down, expand my timeline so I can see it a little bit better, Option plus symbol, and just move everything back a little bit. So what this is going to do is just is going to put more or less space. So if you have whatever keyframes are selected, you can just move those keyframes back to go a shorter animation or forward to go a different animation. Now, I can also change if you want to. I can select, say, these pieces right here and go up to here and change the distance that it takes to animate. Now, here's the price you pay if you do that. So let's say as an example that I want to make this 100 milliseconds, which is a tenth of a second, which you can certainly do. Now what that's going to do, that's going to put more space between your information here, your animation. You don't want that to happen. If that does happen, you need to move it accordingly. So as an example, I'm going to Option or Control plus Control minus to expand the keyframes. So look at the space, put the extra space between here. I don't want to have the extra space between here. So there's extra space between here and here. So how do I get rid of the space? Well, you'd have to select those, move it back, Shift key, deselect that one, move it back, Shift key, deselect, move it back, etc., etc., etc. So what I'm trying to share with you, if you have this much space in your animation, let's say this is proportionally spaced, but then you want to have, my mistake on that, then you want to have less space. So the shortcut, well, there's not a shortcut. The technique for this is to select what you want to affect, deselect the one you don't want to move, move it back. Deselect the one you don't want to move, move it back. Deselect the one you don't want to move. I'm deselecting with the Shift key. The Shift key enables you to select, deselect, select, deselect by holding down the Shift key. In addition to that, another technique here is if I hit Option plus to zoom back into here. Just scroll down here for a second and scroll up for a second. Okay, so let's say you want to toggle in your property palette between the type settings, the scale settings, and the easing settings. This shortcut for that is Shift click. Shift click. I can click on. I can click off. Anyway, I hope these production techniques help you, but definitely with original text, you want to affect your original text inside the Dreamweaver document first. It's so much simpler to do it that way. Incidentally, if you change your CSS inside of your Dreamweaver document, it's going to affect your CSS inside your Adobe Edge document. So it's a very good way to work between both. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at ThinkAdobe. At ThinkAdobe is my Twitter account. Comment suggestions, anything you want to see, let me know. I'm here to help. Have a good day.